Okay, hi. I'm Stephanie Shannon, your PTA president. I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's not always easy to make it to events like this, but your attendance is greatly appreciated. I have some good news to share. As of today, we have had 226 parents, guardians, and teachers join our PTA, which is an amazing number, especially with all the kinks we have had to work out regarding the new website. We have worked hard spreading the word on the fact that you need to join both the website and become a PTA member to have access to the mini news, a fact that I would once again like to reiterate that I just discovered 2 weeks ago. I know change is hard, but at the end of the day, the benefits of the new website will be worth it. Also, please remember that Mini News is a PTA newsletter and not a school newsletter. It does make sense that PTA members should be the ones who get to see it. Moving on with some even more exciting news, as of this writing, we have collected over $8,395 towards our AFO goal of $35,000. With this money, we want to finish the AstroTurf project that we started last year. It will cost well over $100,000 to complete the turf. We have about $40,000 set aside from last year's AFO to complete this project. Set aside from last year's AFO to put towards the turf completion. So it will take some time to complete this project, but we are determined to do so. We're also pricing out sail shades for the picnic areas and possibly over the new playground structure. These sail shades are also not cheap. So the more donations we get, the more we can do for our school and students. You might be wondering, if the turf and sail shades are so expensive, why isn't our goal higher? This used to be the case. The AFO fund used to bring in $75,000 to $80,000 a year. However, as with everything COVID touched, our fundraiser was not immune to taking a hit. We also have a lot of new families and a much smaller population. We need to be a bit more realistic with our goals, given the changes that have happened. And we are willing to do so, still knowing that our projects will be funded eventually. This year, we also have a fun game created by our VP of Fundraising, Ashley Carizis, in which we will unveil a picture of an ELE teacher or staff member as we reach our weekly goals. Last week, we got to see an elementary age Miss Wassel, our school librarian. We're very close to our $10,000 goal this week, so I'm definitely curious to see whose face will be popping up next. Finally, a reminder to check if your employer can match your donation. That match is included in the $35,000 goal. And once again, going to push for volunteers. Remember, events cannot happen or be successful without volunteers. We have a full volunteer sign-up genius for our beautification day on October 16th, which is fantastic. We have family night coming up on Friday from 5:30 to 7:30, and we still need some volunteers. For this event, volunteers will be rewarded with priority parking and automatic entry to all drawer prize drawings. Also, book fair will be next week. The sign-up genius for the book fair has started to circulate. If you can help out with book fair, please remember that you must stay for the full block in which you sign up to volunteer. You cannot just come in for your child's assigned class time and then leave. Another note to consider about book fair, this year book fair will not be tax-free. Please consider this when sending money in with your students. This is definitely confusing for our littlest shoppers who don't understand taxes quite yet. There's also the e-wallet option. The benefit of the e-wallet is that your student cannot lose their money. Another benefit is that if your entire balance in your e-wallet is not spent at this fair, it can roll over to the next fair. But please note that your money cannot be refunded if you do not use your full e-wallet balance. Actually, it does now roll over to middle school. So if you really have a lot of money available, it will go with you to middle school. Anyway, thank you once again for coming. Now let's pass our budget. Can we actually, I messed up. Can we go back a second to the minutes from our last meeting? Yeah. So we just need approval of our minutes from our last meeting in May. One move. Two. Okay, we are approved. Thank you. Now we can go forward with passing our budget. Heidi Keller, our treasurer. She's going to pull it.
So she's going to pull the budget up, and it may be too small to see. I'm not sure. Okay, you can see. As Stephanie kind of walked you through All for One and the realistic numbers that we're looking at for All for One. And we kind of approached the entire budget in that way because of our student population reducing. But overall, there's no major changes with this year's budget based on like what we all voted on in January of this year when we made adjustments to the 21-22 budget. But just a few things to call out. Let's see. So we are paying for like our tax filing, our nonprofit tax filing in November, which previously we had someone on the PTA board that was a CPA that handled that, but I'm not a CPA, so we have a firm handling that. So we had to add that into our operating costs, which makes sense. Other than that, we've already got some things in the works in terms of what we want to do with All for One. So hopefully as the funds come in, we'll be able to move forward, like with the cell shades, some playground supplies, and something that we were working on last year that's actually happening now is the rock wall, which I guess it's in a different section. I don't know where it goes. Anyway, we're replacing a broken rock climbing wall. Other than that, everything else is just adjusted really based on like, what did we do last year or what are the plans for this year? So let me know if anybody has questions. Anybody?
I think we just need a motion then to pass the budget.
Everybody good? A motion to pass? Okay. Second? Okay. That's it. Thank you.
So the next, we're going to move on to Officer Holmes, if you will, to talk about school safety.
If I'd known we were recording this, I would have requested makeup and hair. Anywho's, so when they asked me to talk about school safety, it immediately jumped to, I assumed that you guys wanted to know what we as a school and us as an agency are doing to keep your kids safe, right? Rather than, not so much about kids being safe from one another, but them being safe from what's outside. So that's kind of what I jumped to. And by the head nods, I see I was right. So I have to say that a lot has changed in the last few years. I've been a police officer since 1997. So I was an officer already when Columbine occurred and everything like that. And I've seen all the changes that happened after that. And over the last few years, there have been significant changes within the school and, what teachers and administrators and everybody within the building are being asked to do. We've come a long way from the traditional lockdown when it first came out. The teachers locked their doors, they closed them, they turned their lights off, and the kids sat at their desk and waited till it was over. And unfortunately, in a lot of places, I think that's still the case. CMS, I guess it's been about 3 years ago now. COVID just kind of messed everything up. My years all run together. But a few years back, CMS adopted a protocol which is referred to as the ABCs of active survival. Every CMS employee, teacher, administrator, everyone has been trained in this format. The format that, and I'll go into the steps a little bit and kind of explain what those are for you guys, but just so you guys know, CMS is like leading the way as far as adopting these new procedures. These things, the things that they've been trained in, like I truly believe in these things. The people in this building, the kids, the people, mean the world to me. If I thought what I was training them to do was bad, I would say so. And aside from that, my daughter is an elementary school teacher in another county, and they aren't where CMS is yet, but rest assured, my daughter will have this training. It's that important. So, and you can see how much it means to me. That being said, some of the things that the teachers and staff are being asked to do now are not what a teacher signs up for. We are asking a ton of them, and it's a huge responsibility. So the ABCs of active survival, aside from just locking their doors and everybody staying in their classroom, it is a very proactive system that they've been trained in. So the first thing that they are trained to do is the first strategy in the ABCs is to avoid, right? So they're taught different strategies and methods that they could use to avoid an attacker, or how to deal with situations like that. So for example, if say they were outside with their classroom, it's not necessarily a thing anymore where, oh, we have to come back in to the building where it's safe, right? So we've given them options of, if it's safer to leave, then that's what they need to be doing. One of the examples that comes from is from Columbine. I think it's 9 of the 13 people that were killed in Columbine were killed in the library. And for almost 4.5 minutes, the librarian was telling the kids to hide under the table. And there was a back door. Every one of them could have left, but no one had ever told them, that that's an option before. So, avoiding, we teach them different ways that they could go about doing that. The second way that they're trained is the B in it, which is barricading. And we go through lots of different ways of how they can, barricade their classroom, barricade their door. We talk about the different types of doors, different methods that they can use to, aside from just locking them, but locking them plus this and this and this and this. I tell my teachers to always be working, so if they are in a lockdown and they're making a barricade, keep making it better. And so they learn about lots of different strategies to do that. And, like we explained to them, people who perpetrate these acts and, on schools and places like that, they didn't come there to spend 10 minutes in a tug of war trying to get into a classroom, right? So if it's, if we can make the target hard, hopefully they move on. And then the C in the process is counter. And so, I jokingly, tell my teachers all the time, look, I know you guys didn't become teachers because you have a lot of violent tendencies. And, after school every day, you're not down at the MMA gym beating each other up and stuff like that. But at this point, this is what we're asking them to be capable of doing. And so we go through different things of, what could be used as weapons of opportunity to, to defend their kids and defend themselves and, things like that. And again, for a lot of these teachers, if it's the first time that they've ever had this training, no one has ever told them anything like this before. But we have seen time and time again in these incidents where you're not going to talk these bad guys down. You're not going to de-escalate those situations. And most times the only option you have is to do everything you can to counter and defend yourself and defend your kids. And, knowing the teachers like I do, they're, whether they have kids of their own, all the kids in their classroom are theirs. And, I think them going through the training and just having the mindset and the mental role play of thinking, what would I do if this happens? How would I handle this? How could I respond? And having a plan in mind, puts them well ahead of the game if something ever does happen. It's very important that they've thought through, how they would respond. And then lastly, the last part of it is surviving. So unfortunately, your kids' teachers have been trained in tactical combat casualty care to teach in school. So they've learned how to apply tourniquets. They've learned about alternate things that can be used as tourniquets. They've learned how to treat, emergency treatment of gunshot wounds, of huge lacerations, all those kind of things. They've learned all that kind of stuff, whether they have a professional tactical combat care, casualty kit care, kit there, or if they're improvising with things that they have, availability to. So those are just some of the things that our staff have gone through, and it's intense. I mean, just me talking about it, I get emotional, but for them to sit through it, to go through it and listen to the examples of where these steps came from, because each one of them came from an important incident, right? So like the avoiding came from the Columbine incident, and the barricading from Virginia Tech, and countering from Sandy Hook, and then surviving from the Pulse nightclub. So all of these things are based in reality, and looking back on them, it was put together of how can we improve these situations. So the program that CMS adopted was made by a company called Lockdown International, and all CMS employees have gone through the training. Whether all of them enjoyed it, although it was very hard, it's very intense. Nobody likes it. And I sat back and I wondered to myself, I was like, how did I pigeonhole myself into teaching these awful training courses, man? Like where I'm just like seeing people cry and stuff all the time. But it's super important, and I wouldn't want somebody to do it that it wasn't important to them. So so they've had a lot of training, and I feel confident in the things that they've learned. Like I said, if I didn't believe in the things that I was teaching them to do, I wouldn't teach them. So I do think that they're very important and would be very useful should the need ever arise. That being said, from the in-house point of view, a lot of questions came from my teachers and staff after Texas. And so I'll address what I can of that. I don't know the particulars of why what happened in Texas happened. I don't know what their training, I don't know what their policies and procedures are. But in North Carolina, I do know what they are. I'm certified to train officers how to respond to active shooting events and active attacks and those kind of things. And every officer in the state of North Carolina is trained in how to respond to those incidents. Every single one of them are trained the exact same way. So for example, if I showed up on a scene with 3 or 4, how many other people from completely different agencies, all of us could work together because we've all been trained the same way. Active attacks and stuff like that are no longer a SWAT issue. Back when I started in 1997, pre-Columbine, that's what it was. It was a SWAT thing, right? We surrounded it, we contained it, and then we called those guys that were trained to deal with it. After Columbine, all of that changed. And, for folks who had been police for a long time, when that change started coming in, a lot of those people had to face some realities of, I didn't sign up for SWAT, so is this what I signed up for? But we don't wait. There are protocols, there's training. That's not going to happen. And I know a lot of my teachers are very concerned about that because they had heard that from us, So I don't know what the problem was in other states, but I do know that North Carolina, believe it or not, is one of the leaders of the nation in the amount of training and the training that's required of police officers. We're way out front compared to a lot of states. I was a training coordinator for a few years, and so seeing what other states do versus North Carolina, we're out front. So we're trained, we're prepared. As a matter of fact, we have a training class tomorrow for our officers, like a 12-hour training day that involves active response to active attacks and stuff like that. So I wanted you guys to know that we as an agency, we are prepared. We know what our responsibilities are. I know that most of you probably realized that I've been MIA. You haven't seen my car except for, car rider in the morning time. So I've been pulled to the middle school so far this school year, and I don't know what the plan is going long-term and all that kind of stuff, but the officers know how important this place and these people are to me. And so they know to watch out for them and to be here as much as possible. And of course, I'm here today, so I'll always be here as much as I can. But we'll do anything to keep your kids safe. And so will the teachers. So I know that kind of brushed over everything. So if you guys have questions about anything in particular that I can answer or concerns. Yes.
First of all, thank you for everything
Yes.
that you do, and that was a great overview and very informational. Is there anything that the PTA can do to support your efforts, or anything that information-wise we can help get out, or anything?
And the question, in case you couldn't hear online or whatever, but anything else that like the PTA could do to help with, the safety and, getting messages out and everything like that. I think one of the biggest things is when you talk to your kids, encourage them about, because I hear it all the time, particularly like from the older kids. When people are in crisis and stuff like that, there's almost always leakage of information. People may not want to put it out there boldly and tell everybody, but they want somebody to know. And so they'll leak out little things. So it's important that kids know from a young age, if they see something, say something. If they hear something, say something. Tell a trusted adult, those kind of things. So just encouraging that open line of communication while they're still young as they go up is very important. I know that you guys have ELE has a great PTA and everything. There are things that can be purchased and stuff like that make schools safer. Unfortunately, it drives me crazy, and I'm not an expert. If for all the fire people out there, I apologize. A lot of things that make schools safer from attacks and stuff like that are violations of fire code. And so there's a fine balance between yes, that would be a great idea, but it violates the fire code. So there are some things that that can be purchased and stuff. For example, Sandy Hook was a modern school. They had the buzzer on the door with the camera and everything like that. But when that attack occurred, he just shot the window out beside the door and walked straight in. There are films and stuff like that can be put on glass where you can shoot it and stuff like that all day long, and it won't break the glass. Now, you wouldn't need to put that on every single window of a building, but, maybe on a couple of them and, things like that. So there are some things that can be purchased and stuff like that make things a little bit more secure. Just depends on, price range and the particular layout of the school. If it's a big, window that would be like a huge problem or something, then maybe you want to address it. If it's like a tiny little kitchen window, maybe not so much, you know what I mean? So it would depend on, the particular layout and what the actual, concern was. But yeah, there's always things that we can do to make things safer. It's just a matter of, at what cost and, how it balances out. But we can always look at different things. But there's no glaring thing that the ELE has that I'm like, man, we really got to work on that. And just to brag on, Miss Lael and Miss McWhorter and Miss Stewart, when they were here, they're on it. They're in their office, they look out the window, they recognize cars, they know, oh, that's so-and-so's mom, that so-and-so drives that car. They know what's going on. They're watching, they're super busy, but they're very observant. They know what's going on and everything like that. And that's also very, very important. So, so we have good watchdogs here to keep an eye out too. Yes, ma'am.
Would it be super expensive to get glass in the front area?
I'm sure it's expensive. I don't know how much it would be, there are different options for like, whether it's like a laminate that goes over the glass, or whether it's like a completely, you know, like, or if it's like the complete glass, there's a lot of different options. And depending on, you know, what exactly you wanted to cover and those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, it would be an option depending on, you know, again, what CMS would allow us to do too, you know, because you not only have to deal with like fire codes, but you have to deal with CMS's policy and procedures and all those kind of things. So, but I mean, if it's something that you guys are interested in looking in, I'm sure Miss Lell would, you know, reach out to them and say, you know, hey, we're interested in this. What can we do? But yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the Say Anything training. I don't know that it happens in elementary school, but certainly my middle schooler came home and I heard all about
Yeah.
the Say Anything.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I know they shared a lot in school. Is there somewhere that I can go as a parent and I can review either a PowerPoint presentation or a video recording of what they were told? Because he's taking in whatever he's taking in, but I struggle to be able to talk to him about maybe reinterpreting that information.
I would assume that it may be on either the CMS website. I mean, if they're showing the kids videos, you guys should have access to what they're seeing. Either that or reach out to the middle school, like to their counselor or something, to say, hey, you know, we want to be able to have a better discussion with our kids about the video that they watched. Is there some place that we can view it? And I'm sure that there's a way that you could, but I would reach out to them and see if they can give you a link or something to it. That's a good idea. Because, you know, like the kids come home from school, what'd you learn today? Right. You know, they learn stuff, but like when you ask them, they're like, I don't know. So yeah, good question.
What's more new to ELE and CMS in general, but I didn't know, do the kids get training? Is there like an active shooter drill or what?
Yeah. And so what the kids see when we do lockdown drills, what the kids see are like the tip of the iceberg. So when they go into like a lockdown drill, so like if we were in this room, like the teacher in this room has a particular place that they would put the kids and everything like that. And if it's a drill, that's typically where it's going to stop as far as what the kids are involved in. But the teacher and the administrators and everybody else, their mind is 10 steps ahead, right? So the kids, when we do a drill, don't go into a full-on barricading doors and, you know, all that kind of stuff. They don't go full-on into that. What I do tell my teachers, though, is that after every drill that they have, sit down with your kids and talk to them. Look, there may come a day where when we do this, I may start telling you to do things that are completely out of the ordinary. You know, I may start telling you we're climbing out the window, or I want you to run as fast as you can and don't stop, right? Those kind of things, so that in real life, if it ever happens, they don't completely panic and say, what is going on, right? So that they're at least somewhat expecting that. And it really works. One of my fourth grade teachers, after they had a drill, she was talking to the kids and she was telling them, you know, we may run. And one of her students was like, but my lunchbox. And she was like, no, it's okay. You don't need your lunchbox. And she's like, well, what if we get lost? And like, it went on to this, like this full conversation, right? But if it had been the real thing, that's not the time to have that conversation. And especially with little ones, you know, and that's another big thing with elementary school. You know, if all of my kids are high schoolers, I can easily tell them we're going out the window and running. But there's a huge difference between fifth graders and kindergartners, right? What a kindergarten teacher would be able to do versus fifth grade is going to be completely different. So yes. But what I've heard from most of the kids, especially like fourth and fifth graders, those discussions around it makes them feel more empowered than it does. But even like most of the younger kids, when we do a drill, it really doesn't freak them out. They do great with it, and you know, it's just part of what they've learned to do, just like a fire drill. We haven't lost a student in a school fire since 1958. So, you know, and it's because every single month we have a drill and they make all these buildings out of stuff that will not burn, right? And so we've done a lot, but we got a long way to go with the school safety edge.
I can add that we do a thing called a quick response drill, and we did not do those during COVID just because of all the other rules that we have. A quick response drill is when the teacher does something, and it depends on where they are. If they're on the playground, it's going to be blow the whistle, and there's a signal that the kids look to the adult in charge, and they just follow the directions. And we practiced it before with them, like in a lockdown situation, going toward where they were supposed to go, but then someone had a thing that was like fire or poster board and put that in their way so that then the teacher and the class have to figure out what to do. And so that's a part of our safety plan for this year is to use those quick response drills. But we don't just, we limit the discussion to when this happens, you look and you find the adult in charge if you follow the direction as opposed to being more, explanatory when this might be over 2 minutes.
Yeah. But we definitely want them to be ready so that, they're ready to do what they need to do. And the biggest thing is following the teacher's directions, even if they sound ridiculous and weird and they, why are you telling us to do that? And that's why it's important to have those conversations ahead of time. But yeah, we do everything we can to make sure that everybody's ready. And what I tell my teachers is we need you to survive for 4 minutes, 3-4 minutes, and we're going to be here, right? We're coming. Matthew's response time is anywhere from 30 seconds to 4 minutes. And, and 4 minutes is slow. That's an extremely long time for something like that, because no matter what an officer's doing in town, no matter what they're on, if a call like that comes out, everything gets dropped and everybody comes here. So it's going to be a very short time. And that's what this plan is for them to survive long enough for us to get here and put a stop to it. So that's what I'm asking them to do. You don't have to be able to survive and fight for hours. Give me a couple of minutes until I can get here. Any other questions I can get with?
And then what's the training for the law enforcement and that details? So like, are you shooting to kill at that point if you have an armed gun person?
So police officers are trained to shoot to stop the threat. So if a shooting is necessary, we know though from history that typically people who perpetrate these acts have one of 3 ways that it's going to end. Either they plan to kill themselves, they plan for us to kill them, or they plan to surrender. So we still have to be ready for any 3 of those, situations. It could be that they come out and give up. There have been incidents where things like this have happened in high schools. And there was one incident where a high schooler took his class hostage and another kid in the class stabbed him with a pencil and he completely submitted and it was over. So we just have to be ready for anything. But the biggest thing, our main objective is to locate, isolate, and stop the threat. So that is priority number 1. Once that's done, then we can, do all the other things. So anything else?
Yeah, I know you were saying like you're here in the mornings for control. Like is anyone on campus throughout an entire day? Is there an officer available all the time?
Hey, I hear my guys stop out, quite a bit. Like the school system right now, we seem to be really shorthanded as well. Just to let you guys know, one of the main reasons why I'm gone is like right now we have 2 SRO positions that are available, that are open. The SRO at the high school just left and the SRO at the middle school is gone, which is what I'm filling in. And the chief put out a letter saying, hey, anybody interested in being an SRO, let us know. And we got 0 response, not a single person. Unfortunately, we're at this, all the officers who've been around long enough that would be interested in being an SRO have all been promoted, and being an SRO would be a demotion for them, and everybody else is like brand new. And so they don't want to leave police work. And so it's, and teenagers are intimidating, man. They really are. Like every time I go to the high school, every time I walk past some teenagers, if they giggle or something, I think for sure they're laughing at me. So teenagers are, kind of intimidating. So not everybody wants to, jump into that. It takes a special temperament and personality to, to go in that environment. But kind of right now, that's just kind of where we are. And so we're just doing the best that we can. But, ELE is, always going to be one of my homes. So when they ask, hey, can you come and do this? Like I'll be here Friday. I can't say no. When I get asked to do something, if there's something I can do, I'll be here. But like I said before, like my officers know how much this place means to me. And so they send me messages all the time. Hey, I was at your school. They missed you, blah, blah. So, so they're checking in, and at the very least, keeping a watch out. So, yes.
Just a question on the scanners that have been installed. I know that, of course, you're now at Crestdale, which
Yeah.
I'm happy about. My daughter's at Crestdale, so she gets that wonderful support and coverage from you there. But those have been installed in some of the middle schools and all of the high schools, I believe.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that it's working? It should, obviously, hopefully keep us from any situation that we do not want to find ourselves in. But even looking at the elementary schools where there's been some incidents where elementary school kids have, had things that they should not have.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts with that even being considered to be put into elementary schools?
As far as like scanners in the elementary schools, seeing it with my middle school, and so the middle schoolers doing great with it. At first, they were really worried about it, because they thought, oh my goodness, if it goes off, I'm going to jail, and and that kind of thing. They're a big undertaking. It takes a lot of staff to run them and get all the kids in. But there's so many things that they do detect, like all the Chromebooks, a lot of the school supplies and stuff like that will set them off. I could see where it would be difficult, like trying to get kindergarten, first, second grade through the scanners without them going off 15 times. It's kind of tough because like you said, that fourth and fifth grade level, there could be safety concerns, but down low, not necessarily, so much. I don't know that CMS, and I'm not speaking for them, but I don't necessarily think that it would be necessary at elementary level, particularly like I was saying earlier, if we can keep that open line of communication with our kids about, if you hear something or see something and that kind of stuff. And usually like the elementary kids, if they bring something to school that they're not supposed to have, they're going to show somebody on the bus. Right. And, and then a lot of times, somebody's going to, talk about it. So, I hope that we don't get to that point. But I think it makes some of the kids feel safer that, that people are going through it. And, if it makes a kid think twice about bringing something that they're not supposed to have to school, I'm all for that. Again, I guess it comes down to, how much funds we're going to spend, and maybe one day it will trickle down. You never know. Maybe we'll have them here before long too. But yeah, I mean, and the way you worded, I think that they could help prevent some things. I don't think that they're 100%. Nothing is, of course. But, I think that anything that's a deterrent, I'm all for. So it helps keep my kids safer. That's what's important. Yes.
Will you be coming back here on any regular basis?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. Right now, the question was whether or not I'll be coming back on a permanent basis or a regular basis. Right now, I'm not sure. It depends on, our chief resigned. I know what our old chief's ultimate goal is he wanted an officer at every elementary school all day. But with him leaving and, now we have an interim chief. And so I don't really know what direction we're headed right now. And then the middle school and high schools and Carmel Christian are all contracted SRO positions. So we're contracted with CMS to cover those. So those have to be. My position when I was here was town funded. And right now they just, I guess a SRO position isn't a great position to just assign somebody to, because it really takes somebody you could cause more damage than good, especially in an elementary setting, because so much of what I did wasn't, necessarily safety or policing and that kind of stuff. It was about, getting to know the kids and, them getting to know me and be comfortable with me and that kind of thing. And so it takes I guess, an old guy to fill their shoes or something, I guess. I would love to come back. It's just, I guess they got to figure out up above me which direction.
So is there just an officer here in the morning? Is that all it is? Is there ever more time for anyone here throughout the day?
So I come in out of love for ELE to do the traffic in the morning. And, to look out for you guys, and also because the patrol officers are intimidated by morning carpool out there. So I do that just to help out with everybody. But then the patrol officers, like I was saying, they do try to keep a close eye on, the school and, everything like that. And, whether they get out and come completely in and walk around and stuff, because I know some of them are, believe it or not, are kind of shy, and so sometimes when the kids were used to seeing me in the building, it was no big deal. But like, if they've never seen you before and you come in, you can cause quite a disturbance, and so.
They have actually been doing it though, and I don't know if that's an act if they were directed, but we have at least one patrol officer who's coming in every day and they walk and they check the doors.
Yeah.
They give me a report back on any of the doors that weren't secured, and so I guess they're warming up to us.
Good. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I really did, please look out for my people, the officers that I came close to talking into putting in for SROs, I was like, please look out for my people and my schools, and, and they have kids too, so, they want the officers where their kids are at school to do the same thing. And so, I'm glad that they are looking out for us here, even though, they are super busy. But I would assume that the town would prefer us get back to a place where we do have an officer assigned to the elementary schools. So that was always a really important thing for the town of Matthews. Like I know most of like I did the DARE program for the last 5 years, and we've been doing that for over 30 years, and that's always been town funded. So, it's always been an important thing for them. So I think ultimately that's where they're going to want to get back to. We're just having some growing pains right now. So, and of course I can't speak for them, but just my assumption, that would be my guess. Anything else?
Are teachers who have concealed carry permits allowed to carry on campus?
No, they, I mean, they can have concealed carry and all that kind of stuff, of course, but they aren't allowed to, be armed on campus or anything like that. I don't ever see CMS going to anything like that. I know I got a lot of questions about another county that they put patrol rifles, police rifles in the school, and that made a lot of news. But I think what that was the SROs were given a safe inside the campus where they could store their weapons, not staff members, but for them. So that if there was an incident, they wouldn't have to run all the way out to their car. It would be in the building with them. But I don't foresee CMS going with the armed police. And to be honest, I'm not with that. Like, I mean, honestly, there are kids at the middle school that are bigger than me already, and so, I mean, you just never know. And, teachers have enough to deal with and everything already. So, to try to put something else on them. And I know, some of them would volunteer, but yeah, I don't foresee that coming around.
We have time for one more question.
Well, since you mentioned DARE programs, is it on hold for right now?
It-
Or what are your thoughts?
It's so far, I mean, I guess right now it's on hold. Like I ordered the books, I got all the DARE books, sitting at the police station right now. I was ready to go. And then, both of these resignations from the SRO position, were kind of unanticipated. And so we just kind of had to to flex it. So I guess it's on hold. I love doing it. So, maybe it'll be back. I hope so. Yeah.
So you don't have the staffing to do it?
Say what?
There's no staffing to do it?
No, you have to be a certified DARE officer to do it, and only a police officer can be a DARE officer. Don't get me wrong. I love the DARE program, but I almost always am just reiterating things that they've heard from their teachers. And I think, a large portion of it is just for some kids, it's different to hear it from me, because I hear my teachers tell the kids every single day, be kind, be kind, be kind. But, it's different. I think, when I come in and I'm wearing all this stuff and everything, and I'm telling them the same thing, and because, especially like a lot of the boys, they think that it's probably just, their teacher telling them, be kind because she's a girl or whatever. But, maybe it's different when I come in and tell them the same thing. So, but yeah, I would love to be back doing it and hanging out with them, but we'll see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully something, you never know, something may happen and, they tell me I'm coming back and, jump on it. Don't tell Ms. Schroeder I said that there. The other day, Ms. Schroeder had a meeting. She's a principal at Crestdale, and Ms. Schroeder claimed me, and she whipped around and looked at me, and I felt like a guy who just got caught in the same room with two girls I've been dating at the same time. Yeah, it was uncomfortable. Yeah. But if you guys have questions or concerns or any of that kind of stuff, if I can help with anything, Ms. Leo has all my contact information. Don't hesitate to, email me or call me or whatever, and I'll help with whatever. If you need me to talk to your kid or any of those kind of things, I'm still here for that. Whatever you need. ELE is still my people, so anything y'all need. All right. Thanks, you guys.
Ms. Leo's going to get my presentation up. Before we start, I just have some cards. I'll just take one. My name is Shannon Klug, and I'm a volunteer with Be Smart. And Be Smart is it's an organization that was started by Everytown for Gun Safety, and we do a lot of gun safety promotion and education for all sorts of community groups. So I've got a presentation here we can start with, but just to let you know a little bit about myself. So I am a graduated parent from ELE. My daughter Natalie is now in 7th grade at South Charlotte, but she went through ELE. And I have 2 older children. My son is, I can't believe this, but he's actually a senior at Providence. It's kind of scary. And then I have a daughter that's at UNC Charlotte. So I am also a retired Air Force officer. So I received weapons training in the Air Force. And also a gun owner. So know a little bit about guns and a lot about gun safety, especially with my military background. It was all training, safety, accountability. So if we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Actually, if you go to the next slide, you have to click on the welcome to make the video play. Which button? This one? Okay. Okay. So we'll get back into the presentation here. And I brought some fun stuff over here. So afterwards, I'll stay for a little bit if you want to come look at some of the things I brought. I brought some examples of safe storage that we can play with. But just to jump into it. So, we all want kids to grow up to be happy and healthy. And we each have the right to make responsible decisions about how we're going to protect our families and our homes and our communities, and whether or not that involves having a gun in our own home. And I think we can all agree if we can prevent even one child with gun death or injury, it's our responsibility to do so. So can somebody click the slides for me? Well, I don't know, can I do it from here?
I think that's really.
Oh, okay, thanks. So like I said, we're here to just protect our kids, right? So we'll go to the next slide. So before we jump into the meat of it, I do want to put this up in the beginning, just if you want to take a picture of this or just take a look at it, because some of the stuff we talk about is a little bit heavy, and you may be impacted by gun violence, and we're going to talk a little bit about suicide. So I just wanted to put it out there too, that if this makes you uncomfortable in any way and you feel like you just need a moment, please feel free to step out if you need to, and we'll get into this again. Okay, next slide. So just to tell you a little bit about Be Smart, so you're going to find us at places like this, giving our presentation to all sorts of community groups. We're out in the community as well. This is just a picture of some folks that were volunteers up in the Northeast. We're all over Charlotte, though, too. We're at the Matthews National Night Out. We were in Mint Hill. We partnered with CMPD. We were at a big festival on the Galleria a couple of months ago. We're going to be at the Rammer Road Elementary Fall Festival. But everywhere we can, get out and talk to parents and caregivers about gun safety. And we hand out free gun lots as well to anybody that needs them. So we do our best to try to really educate folks about safe storage. Okay, our next slide. So unfortunately, firearms are the leading cause of death for children in the United States. Okay. And we found that incidents of gunfire on school grounds up to 76%. So this is a statistic that came from the Secret Service. The shooters are under the age of 18 are getting those guns out of their home or the home of a friend or relative. And so, unfortunately, it's heartbreaking that so many kids, it's the leading cause of death in our country right now. So it really is a public health crisis. Every year, 1,800 children under the age of 18 in the United States are killed with guns. That's an average of 5 kids a day. And when children are killed with guns, 54% of that is homicide. So that's 1,000 children per year. An additional 700 children are dying by firearm suicide. And about 100 every year are killed in an unintentional shooting. Okay. So there's a shocking 4.6 million children in the US that live in a house with at least one loaded and unlocked gun. And so while the school shootings and the mass shootings get a lot of national attention, what we're finding is that, like I said, the unintentional shootings and then this, guns on school campuses, those guns are coming out of the home, right? So it's really incumbent on us to make sure that the guns are locked up in the home. So I know this is kind of an emotional issue for some folks, and we're all from different walks of life. You might be a gun owner, or you might not be a gun owner, and you may have experience with guns or gun violence. But we really believe that most gun owners really want to be responsible gun owners. And so it's really a chance for us to have this community conversation, to really talk about it and to make it a cultural shift for our nation, to make this a conversation that we have that's just a natural conversation, like we have other safety conversations about our kids. And so here you can see, like I said, it's an American problem, and these are, just clips of headlines that come out of Charlotte recently. So if you'll recall, last year in CMS, there was 26 guns that ended up on school campuses. And so under the school board, got real serious about that, and the schools and the principals as well. But, you see up at West Charlotte High School, Garinger, this one down here in the lower right, this was an incident where a 1-year-old was unintentionally shot and killed when, another child found a gun. So all of this is sad, and it can all be prevented. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So how are we going to do that? We're going to be smart. So I'm going to go through our acronym here and we'll get started. Okay, next slide. So our first letter in the alphabet here is S. If you want to go to the next slide. There we go. So S is for securing guns in homes and vehicles. 13 million households with children contain at least one gun in our country. And the majority of children in those households know where the gun is stored. So what do I mean by securing or storing a gun? So a gun should be stored locked and unloaded and separate from the ammunition. And that's in your car and in your home. Hiding a gun is not securing a gun. That doesn't count. So the next slide. Oops. So I've got some great examples that you're going to see on the next slide, but I've also brought some here so I can figure out secure storage. So this is one that I recommend for a car. So this is great. It's just a lockbox. It's just really simple. But this is the phenomenal part because this little wire here, you could rope around anything that's connected to the frame of the car, right? So this cannot be pulled out of the car. So, talking to Sheriff McFadden, he has reiterated that stolen guns out of cars is a huge problem in Charlotte, right? But there's a criminal element that's looking for the guns, and they're not going to spend a lot of time in your car if the gun is locked. They're going to move on to the next car. They're not going to try to get it out. So this is a great way to store in a car. This is a cable gun lock, and I've got some here that I can give you if you want one, if you've got a gun that you want to lock up. This just goes through the gun so that it can't be fired. And I can show you a picture of there. Different ways you could do it on a pistol, on a long gun. This is just going to stop the gun from being fired, kind of like a trigger lock. And you can kind of see here too some examples. Going from a gun safe would be like the size of a refrigerator, and those could be upwards of $2,000. To a lockbox like this one, this was $25. A vehicle gun lock. And if you can go to the next slide, there's a few more. So you can see there the cable lock, the trigger lock, and then this one I'd like to share. This is a gun vault. And so, people tell me that they feel like they need to have a gun for home protection and that having it locked up kind of defeats the purpose. Well, I'd say that with something like this, you can get to a gun so fast. So let me just show you, put it down because it's going to. So basically, let me show you first. So there's 4 buttons on the top. It's in the shape of a hand. There's little braille things so you can see it in the dark. Let me just take that. I'll just unlock it. Boom. You have access to whatever you want in there. And so I tell folks, I could get to my gun quicker this way than like rifling through my nightstand drawer, that's got all sorts of crazy stuff in it. So this would be great if you felt like you needed to have access quickly to a firearm. So like I showed you the cable locks. Cable locks are good for, say, you've got small children in the house because they're not going to be able to get through a cable lock. But when your kids get older and they get a little more curious and they're teenagers, they're going to figure out, if they wanted to, how to get that off. So that's when I would recommend going to something like that. Is that got a code that I'm going to get. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So the M in our acronym is modeling responsible behavior. So like I said, it's always the adult's responsibility to really deny a child access to a gun. And we need to make it part of our normal conversations and, keep the language, keep it kind of age appropriate for your kids when you talk about guns and safety, like don't touch the gun, go find a responsible adult. If it looks real or pretend, don't touch it. And I've got a handout over here that talks about how to talk about guns with your kids at the different ages. And you can come pick one of those up. Okay. A is asking about unsecured guns in other homes. So we need to kind of think about this. We can be responsible gun owners, or we can maybe not own a gun at all. But when your kid is in someone else's house, whether it's a friend or a grandma or, an aunt or an uncle, we need to be thinking about, are there guns in that home? And just asking the question and making it a normal part of our everyday safety conversations. So we talk about things like peanut allergies and, hey, my kid's afraid of dogs. Do you have a dog? Those sorts of things. And so kind of use it is part of those conversations, and it maybe sounds or feels uncomfortable at first because we're not used to doing this kind of as a nation, but as you do it, you'll find it gets easier and people will be responsive. And what I have found and what other volunteers with Be Smart have found is that usually the response is very positive, like, oh, well, thank you for asking. I hadn't thought about that, but yes, we have a gun and it's stored, or we don't have a gun, or I'll make sure that the gun is not in the house, whatever. Try it by email or text to start off, if that would make it easier. And if you go to the next slide, we've got a couple of examples of these are kind of just like text conversations on how you could have that conversation with somebody about having your kid in their house and just keeping the kids safe. I can tell people, if they can find where you hid the Christmas presents, then they're going to find where you hid a gun too. Okay, ours recognize the role of guns in suicide. Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless a gun is used. And 90% of the time that a gun is involved, it results in death. And that's like the highest form of any, self-harm. This also contributes to the fact that 41% of children, child suicides do involve a gun. And 70% of people who survive a suicide attempt will never attempt suicide again. So it's just kind of crucial to put that barrier in between somebody that has a suicidal ideation and a gun. And that locked gun can be enough to get them through those few moments there. If you had a gun in the house and there was somebody that was going through a crisis in your family, like what could you do? And one thing we recommend is temporarily removing that gun from your home. You could take it to the police station and ask if they could store it for you temporarily. I'm not sure if Matthews would do that in their armory. You can try like a gun range or a gun store to see if they could temporarily hold and secure your gun for you. Or you could ask a friend or a family member to hold it. But we recommend that if you do go that route, that you give it to them already locked, and you give them the lockbox, but not the code, or the lockbox and not the key, so that you're also keeping their family safe when the gun is in their possession. And then you also need to check the state laws about whether or not you need to find out if they would need to have a background check to hold that gun for you, because the laws are starting to change now. Okay. So the CDC did a survey of high school students and found that 20% had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. And one study also showed that 41% of adolescents in the gun-owning homes reported having easy access to the guns in their home. Okay, the next slide. And so, I wanted to show this again too. So these are resources, the National Suicide Prevention Line, and I don't know if you've got the word, but this was just recently. So 988 now has been established as a suicide crisis lifeline number, which is great. There's been a lot of push for that for many years. So it's great that we've got that great resource now. And then also the Trevor Project has a Trevor Lifeline. And I love this. If you text the word home to 741-741 from anywhere in the US about any crisis, you can get help. So that's another great number to have. Okay, next slide. And then the T, of course, is just tell everybody you know, spread the word, do like I'm doing. Talk to your friends and neighbors, your family members about secure storage. And just, I think, if we as a community start holding each other accountable for our guns and keeping them stored, we're going to be able to really just reduce the amount of guns that end up, walking through the school doors, whether it's a kid like just trying to do show and tell, or maybe with a more malicious intent there. And so we can all, make that happen if we all store the guns and just, make it part of our normal safety conversations too. So if you want more information, you can text the word SMART to 64433, and that can get you more information. You can also go online to besmartforkids.org to see information there. And then if you wanted to be involved with us locally here in Charlotte, you can email me at besmartcharlotte@gmail.com, and I can get you involved. We're always looking for more people. So I encourage you, I want you to think about 3 people that you could talk to, or 3 organizations that you think need to hear this message. And if you've got some good ideas, let me know, and then go out there and tell folks. Yes.
Thank you so much. Your message is incredibly important. I work in healthcare. I've been in trauma for over 15 to 16 years. And I think guns are definitely, obviously, and I've seen this anecdotally, but the amount of suicides we've seen from knives and other sharp objects that people have in their homes is also pretty critical. A lot of damage can be done with that, and I've been witness to that many times. So I know it kind of goes without saying, but I don't know if that could also be addressed within the program as well, because I mean, these things are very accessible to children at home, and also for adults. And a lot of the adults that we saw who were doing suicide attempts were not with a gun, they were actually with sharp objects and with vehicles. So the other things that we saw. So I just didn't know if that was, if that's addressed in the program or.
You know, actually, we just kind of focus on the gun safety aspect of it, but, you know, that's one thing that, there is like a program, I think, called Lock It Up, which addresses not only like the guns, but also like the medications and any sort of, I guess, sharp objects and things that people could use to harm themselves with.
That's a good segue into talking about the medication. I mean, when you're describing this, I remember now my kids are a little bit older, I like to think they're smart enough to not go inject an iron pill. But you hear about Tylenol or iron pills in particular, little kid thinks it's great and they end up dying or causing very serious organ damage. Do you guys have any stats around how, are you able to see an evolution as far as how this is working, as far as people locking things up? And do you find that there are certain socioeconomic groups that are more receptive to locking things up versus others? I mean, I don't know.
So there is research that shows that when families are locking up their guns, there's a, you know, a much reduced chance of any unintentional shootings or suicide or, you know, anything, accidents with the gun. But so I started this in 2018, and I will tell you that I feel like it's kind of been an uphill battle, because in 2020, the amount of guns sold in our country skyrocketed. So we actually have more guns out there now, which is making this job more difficult. But I will tell you too that these conversations are easier and easier to have. So since 2020, when I approach somebody and I offer them a free cable lock, I don't get them looking at me funny anymore. A lot of people are willing to have a conversation with me about owning a gun, wanting to own a gun, wanting to lock it up, and just having those conversations. And the other thing that's, I guess, it makes me feel good when I can actually see the light bulb go off over someone's head and they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it. So it's just something I think maybe culturally we're not all thinking about. You know, that I said, do you have a gun in your house? Yes. Do you have a child in your house? Yes. Is it locked up? No. And then they're like, oh my God, you're right, I should lock my gun. So it's just, people haven't put two and two together. And so that's why it's so important to just spread the word. I think it makes sense, right? But people just haven't thought about it. And so once they do, I think people can start making positive actions and progress that way. I did want to address your question earlier about the Say Something anonymous reporting system. So I'll take my Be Smart hat off for a second. So I also have done some volunteer work with Sandy Hook Promise, and that's the organization that has sponsored that. And so in the middle schools and high schools, I love it. It's a lovely program. And I was advocating for this before CMS got it. And it's an app that kids can download to their phone, or they can call on the phone, or you can do it off the computer. But if they see a child in crisis, you know, like Officer Holmes was saying, that they're going to say something to somebody, right? If they think there's somebody in crisis, another student, they can anonymously report it. And it gives them this whole laundry list. It could be cutting, it could be something like a threat to the school, or, you know, it could be, you know, maybe, you know, bulimia or whatever. It could be any sort of thing like that, and they can report it. It goes to a 24-hour like crisis line where there are like licensed counselors taking those calls and triaging them. So they then figure out, is this serious enough that it goes straight to law enforcement? Is that our first call? And a lot of times it's not. It's not straight to law enforcement. It could be contacting somebody at the school. It could be contacting a counselor, you know, to get that child help. And so the nice thing about it too is that it's anonymous, so that the student that made the report, nobody knows. And that's a big thing for kids, right? The whole like peer, like narking on each other, they don't want to do that. But since it's completely anonymous, nobody knows who made the report. And then you've got trusted adults in the community that can follow up on it and then hopefully provide some sort of assistance before it escalates into some sort of self-harm or harm to somebody else. And Sandy Hook Promise is a great organization. Their goal is to educate 26 million students by 2026. And they feel if they can do that, that'll be a culture shift. Like that's a whole generation of people that will actually be like smarter about mental health, you know, and self-care and being able to notify and, you know, like recognize when somebody in the community is needing some sort of help. So, you know, like kudos to them for, that's their, you know, avenue when it comes to gun violence prevention. They've taken the route of like, let's educate the children and make our society safer. So.
Actually, we had one today. So our officers responded to a department today over an anonymous report. It was a third party, but it involved a gun, and that's where it came from. So, yeah, it does work. You know, and like I tell my kids, I also like to point out too, like it's not just snitching, so to speak, because they're terrified of being a tattletale or a snitch. But it also lets somebody in crisis know somebody heard them. Because whether it's intent of harm to other people or to themselves, a lot of times they leak it. They don't want to broadcast it, but they leak it. And so, you know, it's not necessarily snitching as much as it is letting somebody know that somebody heard you. You know, and that's, so I try to give it that little twist with the kids, you know, to move away from the tattletale to let somebody, you know, maybe you don't know what to do yourself, but you can let somebody know that they were hurt.
So finally, I'll just say that Every Town for Gun Safety put together this report last year. It's called How Can We Prevent Gun Violence in American Schools? And I'll leave this with you to look at. You can also get it online if you guys wanted to read it as well. And it just kind of goes through some ways schools can make themselves safer. So I just want to thank the PTA for inviting me. I really appreciate the time to chat here.
Okay.